And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to episode 8 of the Community CloudCast. I am joined by my fellow co-presenters, Paul McCollin and Jason Himmelstein. Afternoon, fellas. How are things?
Things are good. I'm not as cold as you are in Dallas, apparently. It's 72 degrees here, so, you know.
Ooh, 50.
Yeah.
Apparently has it worked its way down. Mine shows 37, and when I went outside a little while ago, it felt like it.
Yeah, I was going to say 50 and falling fast if it is.
Yeah, it's cold. It's that wind is chilly. Now, people up north watching this are going to laugh at us, but for us, it's cold. we laugh at them when they complain that it's 90 degrees and hot. Right. Well, let's jump into it for our content for this month. Don't forget to join us every month around about this time. We've been pretty good the last few episodes of staying on our schedule, but depending on guest availability, sometimes we move it around. But usually the third Thursday around noon U.S. Central Time, you can hit up our YouTube channel for previous episodes or watch us on Facebook, whichever you would prefer. Feel free to comment if you are watching us live. I know a lot of you watch us after the broadcast has been recorded, but if you are watching live, feel free to leave us a comment. If you do have comments after the show, post that into our YouTube channel is the best way to do that, or you can come over to our Facebook page. Drops there. And this month, we're joined by our special guest, Microsoft MVP Chris Webb. Chris, how are you, my friend?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Been a while since last time I saw you was at DFW Airport.
No, we did the conference.
ShareGate,
not ShareGate. Well,
ShareCloud Summit.
ShareCloud. Yeah.
ShareCloud. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Everything good in your world?
Yeah, just been working, doing a lot of Power App stuff, and slowly going from Teams to Power Apps.
Power Apps. That's not Teams, friends. You're going to lose your identity.
Yeah, I still do Teams too. It's not Teams isn't that complex. Power Apps is a different beast, though.
Well, that it is. Well, we feel free to talk about that if you like later. So we'll have a discussion with Chris in a bit about whatever topics he has on his mind. But before that, we want to thank our sponsors, of course, Aptigent. Feel free to visit us at www.aptigent.com and choose the tool for the platform of your choice. Got some new updates coming soon with some new cool stuff coming out, and some big updates for Salesforce coming later this year, hopefully before summer. We'll get a bunch of Salesforce updates out. We'll have over 100 actions in Power Tools platform by then. So please do check that out. Upcoming events next week. In fact, I will be in the UK for this one at Collab Days in Bletchley Park, which is Milton Keynes, about an hour or so outside of London. At a really cool venue. It's the Computing History Museum. I know that's not the exact name for it, but it has a bunch of old computers that they've restored, most of which are working, and old code breaking devices and whatnot in the museum next door. And in fact, we're getting a presentation from, I believe it's Turing's grandson or one of his relatives is doing the keynote.
Very cool.
And the speaker event, I think, is a whole code breaking exercise. It's a really cool venue. And they've been obviously hit hard by the COVID stuff over the last couple of years, not being pretty much shut down. So the proceeds from the event are going to the Computing History Museum to help keep them going. We are, in fact, sponsoring lunch for that event. So anybody watching this before then, please do come out and join us. It's a free event in Milton Keynes. You can go to collabdays.org and get registered. Following that, April, coming up quickly, is the M365 conference in Las Vegas. I won't be at that one, but Jason, I believe you will.
I will be doing a post-conference with John White on Power BI, everything you wanted to know about Power BI, but we're afraid to ask. So excited to be back in Vegas for that. I don't know how long I'm going to be there, but I know I'm going to be there for at least Friday, because that's when I'm teaching. So,
and that's a full day post-conference, right?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So if you want to get registered for that, sign up at www.m365conf.com. Chris, are you going out to Vegas for that one?
No, I wish.
Yeah,
but no,
I'm not going either. And then subsequently after that will be Share Cloud Summit, May 11th in Irving. Actually, I believe he's only announced the Initech conference so far on that date, but I'm sure he's working on the Share Cloud content as well. For that event coming up, you can go to Share Cloud Summit. I think innotechconference.com is the other URL. Just search for Innotech Irving, and you'll find it. It's a combined conference. For those of you who don't know, it's not just a SharePoint or Office 365 thing. That's the Share Cloud Summit portion of it. But the Innotech side is general technology. There's a Women in Technology conference that happens at the same time. So there's quite a few things that come together. It's always a good event, well attended, and there'll be plenty of opportunities for learning and knowledge and networking at that event. I don't know that I'll have to talk to Sean. We'll probably schedule a SharePoint or something after that, some sort of get together. Last time we went down and I took the speakers down. We played some video games in the arcade. We had a good time. That was a lot of fun. So we'll do something for this one as well, but that's May 11th coming up. And then after that, I'm not sure. I should probably list. I know cloud collaboration or European Cloud Summit's coming up in October, I think. There's NACS in Branson in October. Is there anything in the summer, Jason?
Yeah, so 365 EduCon in Seattle is May 9th to the 13th. You've got 365 EduCon in Dallas, August 8th to the 12th, and then in September in Chicago, the 26th to the 30th. I know there's a bunch of virtual stuff happening as well. I know there's going to be a Microsoft Ignite and some other things happening as well for you, those of you who are still doing all the online events. But as far as the in-persons, those are the ones that I know of as of right now.
Cool. And I know Chris has one to share with us, the Teams Nation event. He's going to talk about that a little bit later, give you some details on that. So that's coming up as well. So lots of opportunities if you're like us and would prefer to get back into the in-person events. You have those opportunities coming up. Still a few virtual ones as well, if that's your thing. Or if I know a lot of people still have limited travel budgets. So unfortunately, there's some virtual hybrid stuff that still has to happen. But if you can get out to an in-person event, get those back going. That's the way to do it. So what we thought we'd do normally, as everyone knows, we have sort of a round table where each one of us shares some news. Paul usually talks about Salesforce and non-Microsoft cloud stuff, and Jason talks about Power BI, and I talk about Azure and whatnot. But really, this time of year, there's not a lot of news going on. Be another month or two, I think, before we get any real significant news coming out. So what we thought we'd do in this episode is talk a little bit about the job market in general in 2022 with a specific focus on cloud and also development technologies, and just chat about how we feel based on what things are happening out there and what we're seeing. So the first topic up is most in-demand technology jobs. So did some poking around on LinkedIn and found a general consensus. I didn't put these in a particular order, but a general consensus that these are the hot jobs. I can say from personal experience that I know somebody that was talking to a recruiter recently who all they were hiring for was DevOps. And so I know that's a hot thing out there. A bit of surprise on here, a blockchain engineer. I'm not sure what that is or what a blockchain engineer does, but here's the list. So let's get everyone's thoughts on what we think about this particular list. Anything here surprise you, or does this sound about right?
Well, it's definitely lacking anything having to do with data. That's for sure.
That's surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a targeted list towards the engineering side of the house as opposed to the data side of the house. And the other thing that seems to be missing for me here is anything on the UX UI side of the world as well, because I know just in my world, I get hit up all the time about data opportunities. Granted, I live in a data-driven world, but from a data perspective, DBA has become a hot thing again. Especially given cloud hosting of databases and things of that nature, understanding the need on that side of the house. And more than that, it's on the analytics side of the house and understanding big data and things of that nature. So I think that the scope of this particular LinkedIn Pulse article was very much focused more towards the infrastructure side of the world and to the developer side of the world, because, programmer analysts, I could see that being somewhat on the UX UI side of the house. But DevOps engineering is definitely a huge thing in our space and our world, and cloud architects as well. So I definitely agree with those two for sure.
Paul, what's your?
So I feel like the surge, because
I've
been tracking the.
Talk for a minute.
What's that? So I feel like the surge on data and analytics has dropped down a little bit. I'm sure you get a lot of that, Jason. I used to get a lot of the UX UI stuff just with my in group background and hobbies, and I've seen that drop off a little bit and go back to be overwhelmed by the surge of DevOps engineers, developers, and cloud architects. I think some of those cloud architect roles cover some of the data architecture you're talking about, with a lot of the data structures being moved into cloud, the MongoDB data fabric, and the Azure data fabric stuff, where they're the caching layers and Redis and those kind of things. So you've got to be able to move between those layers with the same kind of concepts. And they may be homogenizing those titles underneath cloud architect, or hopefully a cloud data architect. But I do feel like those have dropped down a little bit, but they are not going away.
Yeah, so picking up on that point, and also what Jason said, DBA. What does a DBA mean these days? Is the traditional thought of we're managing SQL, we're managing Oracle, but now with cloud hosted databases and SQL in the cloud and whatnot, does that role expand to I'm a DBA, so I need to know more about cloud technologies and infrastructure in general?
So I'd argue yes, and it's also understanding how to build out the right schemas and optimize for a world where you don't have access to the hardware layer anymore. It's not something that can go maximize efficiency by changing MaxStop or things of that nature. You have to understand how to architect for the data, for it specifically. How do you make it so that data can be normalized? How do you make it so that things are easily accessible? How do we move things out of transactional and into a warehouse so that I can now get at that data from a reporting perspective? How do I make sure that everything is the right level of security across the board? Because I no longer can just go yank the cable out of the back of the machine at the end of the day if I have a breach. You really have to understand all of those things. So from a DBA perspective, it still is a key core thing, and understanding where your data is being surfaced as well. The surface area of all of it is important to know what's being visualized, who has access to what. So I think it's truly a core thing that we are looking at in this ecosystem from a DBA perspective. Also, what happens from a backups perspective? What happens from a cyber threat perspective? How do you make sure that all of these things are taken care of when you no longer have total control over your environment?
I think it puts a microscope under the skill set on optimization as well, because unoptimized, databases equal more expensive databases. So I think it puts a lot more focus on that, because before you had a whole lot of hardware to throw at things or just available, but now the more resources your database queries and unoptimized stuff takes, it's going to cost you more money in the end. So I think that skill's a little bit more magnified as well.
Yeah, for the consumption model view. Yeah, but I'm definitely with you, data, Chris. Jason. There was a trend to see chief data officers as a title. I know that we went to chief digital officers, but I 100% agree that understanding there needs to be a hybrid between data governance and data security, and that model and where your data flows throughout your organization should be something that people are investing in more, and we should see those more in big companies as we go forward. So not just reporting and analysts, but just awareness of everywhere your data is, what it is, and what level of security, and make sure you're reviewing that for appropriateness and speed all along the path. But having somebody manage that end to end as opposed to application by application I think needs to come more into focus. A little bit of a tangent from our job market thing, but hope to see that companies express their value by the data that they have, and their liability. That should come much more into focus and be much more clear roles.
I think that a role missing here is a cloud data architect.
Yep.
Because we've got now data in all these SaaS providers. We've got multi-cloud. You've got all these different areas where you have large amounts of data. For example, if you're a mostly Microsoft shop, but you have Salesforce as your CRM, you've got a tremendous amount of data in that repository that's critical to your revenue flow. Then you've got all this Microsoft data that you have from your application stack and Teams and SharePoint and wherever else that you're ingesting data, right? Some of that probably in Azure. Now you're on 2 clouds plus on-prem. Who's bringing that together? Who is actually, Jason, to your point, deciding how you get that reported? How can you surface that data when you got it across all these different silos? So someone has to bring that together. That's not really when I think of DBA, I think more hands-on working with the data sets themselves. I think there's an opportunity here at a higher level for someone to wrangle all of these data cats, as it were.
Completely agreed.
So what do we think, and maybe this is just, the author of this particular article, although I did see blockchain in a couple places. What is a blockchain engineer doing? That sounds to me like someone playing with a crypto wallet and
it sounds like people who are managing how the chain comes together. Sometimes you have to twist it. Once to click. So it just depends upon how the chain is. Yeah, it's just one of those things.
The perspective that I've heard on it, and I'm only conversational on it, is where you're sharing data that you need integrity of the data when you share it out to people and they can be able to trust that the data has been unaltered. People are using that to store, if they publish and broadcast, instead of making these open RSS feeds that can, suffer attacks, that everything is, if it's more sensitive, it's nested inside of a blockchain to where you can confirm all of the transactions that led up to there and trust the source or the iterations of data that have led to whatever is being broadcast. So it's more about building a publicly confirmable trust of published data or exchange data, as opposed to just trusting the real time of, I just got this answer over this REST call. How sure am I, or how much can I trust that endpoint if I can't go validate it and see that it hasn't been altered? I didn't get man in the middle. I didn't, this wasn't a fluke. I didn't lose a digit. You're getting some backup there. So anywhere where trust is a highly sought after for data transfer, that's where blockchain is coming in. Transactions, money exchanging,
sure,
credits, debits, but any other secure detail. That's what's going into blockchain because it's shareable, but not something that you have to really expose any of your internal data for audit. You can put it all on the public and it's all verifiable.
Yeah, blockchain is a whole lot more than just like crypto. I mean, there's a lot they use it for just storage, like mass storage shared across a whole bunch of endpoints. There's a lot of stuff that blockchain can do that I've seen here and there, but not too much expert on it. But they got engineers doing all kinds of stuff more than just crypto. And
it's a highly verifiable logging tool. So transactions are logged in it to manage crypto. Anything else? If you're exposing stuff through Splunk, you can just show that there was nothing erased between here and there. You can verify the entire chain of events that have happened in blockchain as opposed to trusting. So, sorry,
Chris,
interesting
anything
thing.
on this list that you see missing? Chris, I think you're on mute. Not sure if you heard me on this one, but anything on the list that you see that's missing?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I don't know what like Power Apps and Power Automate, Power Platform stuff's really starting to. I'm seeing that take off as far as pretty lucrative job offers actually in the market that I've seen for just teaching people how to do Power Apps or even just building apps out of Power Apps. So
Low-code dev should definitely be something that we start to talk about That should show up more. That's become a first-class citizen in the Salesforce world, and I think Chris can vouch for the fact that in the Microsoft world, you could have a nice career doing just Power Automate and never getting down. Is that fair in the Microsoft space as well?
Yeah, I would say so. Power apps, Power Platform in general. I mean, my job is turned from cloud architect into Power Apps developer for the most part, where I'm at now, just because the things that I've built and the demand has just gotten up because of how well some of that stuff works. So I've been reshaping a lot of our organization with Power Apps. So
Yeah,
Well, and
I
that's
love
true on other platforms as well. You mentioned Salesforce, but also, there's a lot of people are using things like Monday and Workato and QuickBase and, building business applications. So it's almost like a business applications developer. And I'm not sure what the title is, but yeah, I think there's a lot of room in there, and that's a hot commodity that a lot of people are moving towards. Some maybe reluctantly, but moving nonetheless.
Yep, I have fun taking work away from developers and hey, we've got to do this in custom code. It's like, nope, I think I can do that in the Flows platform, and I can do it declarative, just with the drag and drop interface they've got without code, and being able to size it. And they keep growing that platform to where I'm almost not recommending people go learn declarative code or custom code because the growth of the declarative version is expanding so much, at least in Salesforce, and also with the Nintexes and Power Automates. Those in Decisions.com, all the other platforms are out there. Just think structured, and there's a platform out there that you can go get into. You don't have to go back and learn what pointers are and object structure and OO notation.
I think,
Yeah, well, and to that point, we're solidly in the add-on space for those types of low-code declarative platforms, realizing that people can do so much, and then they need to take it a step beyond, and that's why we have connectors for Power Automate and Salesforce as well, to help those people take that next step beyond there. So most in-demand programming languages, this comes up every year, right? Doesn't seem to change all that much. JavaScript's still at the top of the list, according to this survey. I was actually a little surprised to see Go down as far on this particular list as it is. I don't see Swift on there anymore, which is obviously just silly because there's a ton of uptake in there. People still developing for the mobile Apple ecosystem, and I have no idea what Kotlin is.
Kotlin is a Java platform for Android app development, I believe. I think Kotlin and Corretto, I want to say, are closely related. Let me confirm that really fast.
Anybody surprised by the top three here? Top 3, 4? No, pretty standard.
So I'll say that JavaScript is getting weird. So I have been the JavaScript guy for forever. Still back to Silverlight days and stuff, but calling those out. But so JavaScript is landing as a language specification on a lot of platforms. So C#, Python, all of those are fairly, running platform specific. You're running it on a Python engine. You're running C#, I still believe, is mostly on the .NET. TypeScript's a library I believe you used within JavaScript. C++ is still a compiler based PHP, but JavaScript, so LWC, Node, there are a ton of different platforms that use rough offshoots of the JavaScript language specification that may be artificially inflating that. So you may have client-side JavaScript, which is my jam. I insert that into whatever server-side platform I'm in, and then LWC, which is a new kind of Node-like in Salesforce, then Node, which is actually JavaScript-based. Some of the other Angular and React, I think, all call themselves. They're different stacks, different platforms, but all use a rough offshoot of the JavaScript language, which is a C type, which is number 8, number 6, and number 4. So we're maybe getting a little blurry there on the JavaScript, just as a comment there. And I keep hearing more about Go. Go is on the top of some of the lists I went and looked at.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised to see it down there, which is on the Google platform for folks who aren't familiar with that as a coding language from Google.
I'm surprised to see C still on there.
Lots of old time stuff still running around. But this raises a question, right? Objective C, right? If you're building for Mac and the Apple platform, you're not using Swift, you're still using a very direct descendant of C. So is that where that falls? I just thought it was not surprised by the top three, really. And I agree, Paul, with your point that all the JavaScript stuff, Node and Angular and all that stuff falls under that particular moniker, I think. So I thought I'd just take a quick glance around and say, people talking about jobs, they want to talk about high-paying jobs. What cloud certifications potentially help you to those jobs? Now, I know we all have our own opinions on the value of certifications, but by and large, a lot of people still believe that those are important. And here are the ones that were ranked by WizLabs as the highest paying. Google at the top, followed by AWS and Azure. Now, when we say ranked, they were within a few grand of each other, right? So that's very subjective, obviously. But so let's just have a brief conversation about the actual value of these certifications. Do we think that they help, that having a Google certified professional cloud architect helps you get a good job doing that, or have they kind of gone by the wayside?
So I'll speak to number 4, the Salesforce Certified Technical Architect. That is an MCM level certification. That is 15 certs to qualify for a $15,000-ish panel interview certification. So that cert opens door. It's not the certification itself. It is the collection of everything that goes with it, and the fact that there's only a couple hundred of them in the U.S. So I don't know if like CCIE, if the other certs on this list are that level where there's just not that many. I wouldn't say it had to do with the cert itself, more the rarity of it, maybe. So just throwing that out there.
Jason, what's your take?
Yeah, I'm not a big certification guy personally. I'm a hands-on type of a person, and as I look at this, there's an awful lot of AWS and Google certs here. I definitely know that there are lots of folks out there that are working on getting these certifications. The expert level certs out there and the architect level stuff, all of it's going to potentially give you a boost from a salary perspective, but in all reality, these days, I think that people with the experience and that are interviewing well and are coming and hit the ground running, or it's not necessarily a requirement to have these certifications. So I think it's great, but not something that I really tend to put a whole lot of stock in. When I'm hiring for things, I don't look to see if they have certifications. I look at what their experience is, and can they talk to that experience? Can they? A lot of times it's, hey, can you show me something that you've done? Right? Mm-hmm. What type of things have you done? Because it's a lot more experiential, because to go off and spend all this time to get a certification in a world where the ecosystem shifts so dramatically, so frequently, it's hard to justify a 15 certification type of thing, that then a $15,000 panel to maybe get the cert. Just my take. It definitely shows expertise, but how long is that expertise good for? And,
so
does somebody sit on that for 10 years and say, oh, look at how I've done what I did 10 years ago? That's always been my issue. So
the thing I love about the Salesforce certification ecosystem is once you get a cert, you don't just keep it, you have to maintain it. And they have training that you have to go out and continue to keep updated on all these certifications. And it is interesting for the people that are in the 15, 20 cert range of how much maintenance, how time they're spending on maintenance they're having to do. So if that were part of the rest of the ecosystem's kind of cert maintenance and cert upkeep, I think we'd be in a better place. But I totally agree, especially it was a point in time. All my SharePoint 2010 and 2007 certs feel like wasted time. Storage, record
My
storage
Moss
limits
cert
of
is
the.
still rock solid, I'm telling you.
I can do WSS with the best of them. It's me and CA, next level. But yeah.
Chris, what's your take?
Yep.
So I agree mostly with Jason. And I think it's highly situational. So, I mean, it just depends. I think bigger organizations are going to have more value in the certification just because they're more process oriented when it comes to hiring and whatnot. But it can also help get through the HR gate because usually the recruiters are looking and they're going to see certs and put you up on the list if you have the certs versus people who don't. But when it boils down to the actual interview and looking at stuff, it's going to be more towards just your experience and how you interview. I think the interview skills are the most important out of anything. Just being able to talk to people and talk shop and work through questions that they may ask you, and the think tank behind how you answer those. And if you're in like a position that's kind of pigeonholed in a bigger company and you're stuck doing one thing and you can't really work on other stuff, certifications can help come into play because you can learn those and then do them and then have that to show that's your kind of your experience getting into the door versus if you work for small organizations, usually you're going to be working on that stuff before you move up and go out and find another job somewhere else. So it's kind of situational, I think. So,
yeah, I think that's a great point. That's a great transitional point. I've actually had them hurt an interview before. People are trying to get certifications to show that they're qualified to get a new job. And a lot of the certifications show you've known how you've been working in the space for multiple years. And if somebody tells me they passed X or Y exam but have no experience in it, then that makes the profile very suspect for me. Like you can't have known all of this stuff except for book memorization, and this isn't supposed to be a book memorization. It's supposed to be a show what you know.
Yep, good points. Yeah. Right. So just moving, I think we can all agree on probably what the cloud trends are. We want to get into Chris's content here real quick, but we've talked in the past, multi-cloud and hybrid cloud, big things, AI, edge and serverless, what's going on with cloud-based DR and whatnot. So this is just a tick list. Anything just at first glance that you guys see that's missing from the cloud trends here, things that you're seeing? That pretty much tick all the boxes.
That's pretty broad. Obviously being the data guy, I'd be looking more for, what's happening in the analytics space and big data and stuff like that. But I think multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, all of those things is what we talk about when we're talking about data. So I think in a broader sense, I think it does cover everything pretty well.
All right, so let's jump into our featured guest presentation. Chris Webb, I'm sure, has some delightful information to share with us. And so we are going to turn it over to Chris. What do you got for us, buddy?
All right, so going to be talking just kind of, what the latest and greatest in Teams is. So let me pull up a screen share if this will work out for me. Don't need audio. All right, cool. There we go. So just got a quick not going to do that. I'll just do it this way. It slides up. So what's the latest and greatest? Just kind of got just a collection of stuff that's been coming out lately. Coming out soon if it doesn't show up already. And I'll show a couple of these items as we go through. But going to start with UI, UX changes in Teams and improvements. There's a new sharing experience in Teams, so that when you share a file in chat, you used to just share it and it would just share with whoever is in the chat automatically in the back end. You really didn't have control over what you could do with that file, making it read only, making it edit. You had to go through OneDrive in the background and go make those changes in the My Teams files folder where it would just randomly stick it. But now you've got a lot more controls over that, and I'll show that here in a second after I go through this list. There's been a bug for years. It's probably been a thing for 5 years where you could not rename a channel in Teams in the folder underneath, because if you don't know, every channel in Teams has a SharePoint folder tied to it in a document library with the SharePoint site collection attached to the team. And when you would rename a channel, the folder that it was attached to would not rename. So if you were going to look for files through SharePoint, looking for a channel name, aka the folder, it would have an old name to it and it wouldn't rename correctly. So they finally pushed out the change for that, where when you rename a channel, it renames the underlying folder to match it. So
Nice. I want to say I saw that happen where you like both versions were out there at one time, the old name and the new name, and it copied the files. It seemed like it. I ran into that. That's fantastic.
if you rename the folder on SharePoint, it would duplicate, because then the channel, once you added a file to a channel, it would add that channel name back in there again. So that's kind of where that duplication would come from. There's a new hover card time zone feature that's kind of slick, especially if you work in a worldwide organization or something. And I can show this, but anytime you hover over somebody's photo inside of Teams, there's now a little section in that hover card that pops up, shows what their time zone is and what time it is in their time zone, their current time. When you go to try to send them a message or something, you can kind of see that. So it's kind of helpful to know you're not messaging someone in the middle of the night or something. They may not answer. There's a new compact chat feature, put little claps next to that because it's kind of nice, makes it look more Slackish, whatnot. If you've used Teams in the past, you notice a lot of wasted white space. There's a new compact chat version view you can turn on in the chat, kind of compresses everything down, looks a lot more like Slack. You got a lot more room for text. It doesn't eat up so much screen real estate. They changed all their emojis to this fluent emojis. It's just they're moving in these 3D colored emoji stuff. It's more
what is a fluent emoji mean?
That's
just has depth.
It uses the new Fluent UI emoji stack they're building with Windows 11, and now they're bringing it into Teams, so it doesn't use the old looking emojis. It just looks more 3D and everything. And the walkie-talkie feature. So if you ever used to use Nextels back in the day, Teams now has this feature, and it's built into iOS now. It was in Android only for a while. It's now in iOS. You can get it set up, activate it, and you can do walkie-talkie. You can push a button, talk to a group of people in like a walkie-talkie group, similar to the Nextels from back in the day. So that has iOS support now.
It only works though if you say over after you finish talking. You have to go over, and then otherwise it doesn't work.
Anyway, actually, I need to switch. So this is one. Okay, I'm not in public preview. So this is weird because on the community the other day when I was doing the new sharing functionality, it wouldn't work for some people. People were complaining about like the permissions were messed up because they changed them on the back end. Well, apparently, public preview does not have the new sharing functionality, so it's still using the old method, assigning permissions, which no longer works. So it's breaking sharing files if you use public preview. But GA has the new sharing functionality feature. So how that makes any sense, I don't know. I've complained to Microsoft about it, so they need to fix it. So
that's where we see the demand for DevOps engineers.
Yeah, if you have public preview turned on, you don't have the new sharing functionality right now. So make sure you're on GA if you want to check this out or anything. Let me hide this. So essentially, if you upload a file from your computer, we'll just say this activity log file. It uploads now. If you notice underneath here, I got this people in this chat link. You can click here and set your permissions directly whenever you share a file anywhere in Teams. This is nice. So if you do this you can do anybody in this chat. If you're in a team, you can say people currently in this team, or you can even say anybody with the link. You can fully customize this like you have in OneDrive, except you do have the in this chat and in this team option, which you don't have in OneDrive. You can set all your standard sharing options. Not going to go through all that, but that's essentially the feature. It's really nice. Previously, it would just pop in, it'd go to your My Teams files, and then set permission directly with the chat with edit. So now you got a lot more customization there. So that's the sharing feature. The compact chat. Let me see. So this is the old chat. Used to just be all in the middle. You got a whole lot of wasted white space. Can't do much about it. I'm going to go in the preview. The compact chat is in public preview only right now, so let me switch that. All right, and I still got the same old UI here. If I go into settings And right here under chat density, you have this new compact feature. You can click on that, and now you'll see I got a whole lot more, less white space. It looks a little more slack. It's got a lot more room so you can read and do your chat. I prefer this a lot more. It's definitely,
So that's a global change. You can't do it on a chat by chat basis.
yeah, that's a global change
Mm.
as of now. And it only does it in chat. It doesn't do it in Teams. I don't know if they're ever going to do it in Teams because I know they're working on some UI changes there. So I don't know if it'll ever come there based on some of the stuff I've seen there. So, all right. And the hover card. So if I hover over Sandy here, you'll notice right here underneath contact, it says their current time and the same time zone as you. If she had been in a different time zone, it would pop up with their current time and list what time zone that they're in. So nice little ad there. The emojis, basically, if you click on any emoji, you can see they're all different now. They used to be just kind of the basic yellow colored emojis. Now they all got the 3D looking, colorful, fluent UI emojis, what they call it.
That seems like a solid investment in engineering time.
Yeah, thank God.
I know, right?
I have been waiting.
Now I can finally start using Teams.
Do I have Clippy? Do we have some Clippy?
Right. So here's some of the good news, usable stuff. They have been making vast performance improvements with Teams. I don't know if you notice how fast I switched public preview over. It loads 10 times faster than it did probably a year or two ago. I mean, Teams was dog slow, ate up so much CPU, and they've slowly just been behind the scenes making things faster, use less CPU, a lot more battery performance. I've seen slides from engineering team that show pretty good improvements across the board. It's just a slide that they can just kind of showing, what they've been working on and where. But I just kind of wanted to point that out because it definitely has been improved. Still not there, and they know it, but they've come a long way over the last few years. Some new things in calling that I pointed out that's just recent. They got one-to-one transcription. If you want to add that to a call, you can turn that on. And there's also a SIP gateway that they've launched recently where you can go in, you can use some of the main providers, not everything, like the Polycoms, Cisco's, Yealinks, and I don't know, there was one other one, but that they support out of the box. So if you got some older phones or some phones from those providers, you can actually connect up to the SIP gateway and use those for your calling. So you don't have to buy new phones to use basic hardware calling functionality with Teams calling if you decide to migrate to that. As far as meetings, they've been putting most of their time in meetings ever since COVID, especially. Every few months, the meetings layouts change. There's new features. There's a lot of stuff in the meeting space. If you didn't see Ignite, I believe they announced it or something recently where they're looking into the AR space or the VR space for doing meetings. So if you ever use like VR chat or Alt Space VR, I think Microsoft bought one of those.
Yeah, I think Microsoft Mesh is, I think you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's coming in down the line. It's still infancy, but I think that stuff's cool. We did a VR event after our Teams Nation last year, and it actually worked out pretty well. Especially if you had a VR headset, but you can do it on the PC as well. But it's pretty neat stuff. I think it can be cool, especially if you do have a VR headset and can write on whiteboards and do all of that. I think it's going to be a pretty cool thing if they do it right.
So there's one there I'm curious about. Individual NDI audio feeds. Does that mean when they record, it actually can split out individual audio streams?
Yep. So the way it works now, it pretty much takes all the feeds into one, but now you actually get an NDI feed per camera, per user coming in. So you can actually, bring in the audio and mess with it, mute, whatever you need to do per user versus...
Is that public preview? Is that release?
I think it's released. It was on their blog recently, this last month or so. So it's coming soon if it's not already in there. Sorry about the background noise if you hear it. But some of the features I'll go through real quick. Raise hand order. Basically, when you raise your hand now or before in Teams, it would just have a whole bunch of icons that everybody raised their hand. but now it shows what order they click that in. So you can go in order to reply or ask, do you have a question? It'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, the order of when they raise their hands. There's an auto recording feature, and I'll show how to turn this on. It's kind of cool. So you don't have to remember to turn recording on. When you set up a meeting, you can actually click a box that says auto record my meeting. So when you go into it, you start it, it just records it for you. Music mode's a new thing. They did this for teachers in school mostly, but if you've ever tried, and it's going to actually help me with OBS, because I used to do an OBS feed through Teams meetings to do a bunch of UI stuff and everything, and play sound through my OBS feed as an output through Teams. And when you would do music or anything, that the sound would be real choppy. It would cut it off. It would think it was background noise. So you would get mixed results with that. But what music mode does is put a high fidelity mode on the music or on your audio for your input, and it doesn't try to decode it or mess with the audio feed. It's a more high latency version of that sound. So when you turn that on, even if you use OBS to pump sound through, or if you're playing music instruments or whatever through that audio input, it's going to sound a lot better and be a lot better latency and stuff. It's just its own channel that prioritizes.
Zoom has a pure audio mode that's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Mirror my video. It's pretty much down in the bottom. When you look at yourself, it's turned the opposite way. If you prefer seeing what you would look in a mirror versus the way it turns it, you can turn that on and it'll switch it back. Just a preference thing. Backgrounds for web. That's when you set up a virtual background. You can do that on the web client now. You could only do that on the desktop version previously. And I got a breakout room feature here. I didn't want to go into this too much because I don't use breakout rooms a ton, but they have been putting a lot of work in there. If you look up break room features, Teams blog, it'll go through a bunch of these new features that they have there. They got things like changing participants per room on the fly now. They got.
So this is really cool. I looked into this a couple of days ago because we talked a lot about that before doing this webcast, about doing more of a conventional user group type of approach, right? But we needed good breakout room functionality. It wasn't there. At the time, so we actually landed on this format, but that would help a lot of user groups having a proper breakout room functionality.
I agree. I mean, Teams has expanded, the participant size. You can get up to like 1,000 per now, and plus you got these break rooms. You can just send everybody to, like we used to do, our breakouts after our main presentation. Have the admin guys, users, and devs, and split that out. And you got a lot more control over that. But they've been adding a lot of functionality to this.
Are you? Is that something you guys are using in your conference, or how are you handling it?
We're using just a bunch of meetings that we set up, or we do it by rooms. So we have, how many rooms are we up to? 12 rooms, I think, all day. And then we just split. We record the whole thing, and then I have to go through and process all those recordings. But we have moderators for each room that sit in there and introduce speakers and everything. We just keep one room running all day. So when you look at the schedule, you see room 1 with the track and all those sessions, and you just go join room 1 whenever the time is there. So that's kind of how we do it right now.
That seems to be the way everyone does it. Could breakouts make that experience better?
I mean, you probably could, but I think joining a breakout room is going to be more difficult. I'm not sure how that's going to look because you have to join the main room. I mean, I guess it could work fine. I haven't looked into it much lately because the way we do it just works fine. And they didn't have a lot of this functionality previously where you could change
a lot
of participants. So like now you can. So it's probably getting to that point where it's
the Zoom functionality is that the owner of the group or the host of the meeting puts people into rooms as opposed to the participant getting to choose. I don't know that I've seen anybody head the direction where the participant gets to choose a breakout room by themselves and go. The current UI is to be managed by the administrator. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops if it does, and that would be useful if you're doing a conference. But
Teams,
harder to manage.
You can pick what room you go to in Teams. You just could not assign participants, and now you can if you need to for them. But you can actually pick what room and breakout you go to. So you can assign, and there's randomizations that they've added to, or you can randomize groups out. They did it for EDU, so you can do like, for the class, just randomly.
Yeah,
split
it's the classrooms and
out.
making sure that the kids go to the right room and don't get to hop in or hop out at will. I think there was some structure planned there, and that's where the functionality I've seen to focuses on. But it'll be neat to be able
Yeah,
to see
although
that
from
optional.
a conference perspective, hopping in and out is ideal, right? That's what
Yeah.
you want. You want to be able to jump between rooms. I would think a good experience, much as I really don't like virtual conferences, but a good experience would be a main feed that has all of your sponsor info and rolling videos and promos and all that stuff. You come into that, and then you go into the breakout room that you want for individual sessions.
Yeah, I agree.
That are on. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, definitely thought about that. So I like doing this in Outlook because you can do it ahead of time. So I'm kind of showing the auto record meeting. If you didn't know, this stuff's built into Outlook now, which is nice. So when you start a meeting, you say, Teams meeting, you get this meeting options thing built in Outlook now.
My favorite feature of Teams is an Outlook feature. There's a checkbox that says make all my meetings Teams meetings.
Oh, yeah.
And so it does that automatically. Every time I create a new calendar event, it creates a new Teams meeting for it without me having to click the button or find it. And that is
definitely good
away
point.
for a while on my PC. And oh man, did I miss it.
But anyway, when you hit meeting options, you get all these options that you can set, who can present, mics, all that stuff. And now down here at the bottom, there's a record automatically checkbox. You can check on this and that'll record the meeting for you when you go in there. You can do this in Teams as well. The problem with Teams is when you set up a new meeting, you can't set the meeting options until after you save it. Why, I don't know. It's kind of weird, but say I set up a new meeting, save it. Once it's done, you can come in and open that meeting, and then you'll have the meeting options button up here.
They need to fix that, obviously. Yeah. And something went wrong. Love it.
Well, it's because I didn't have my browser profile. It's tied to my company. Here you go. I got multiple profiles, so it's got to have the same web login. There's the same options in the web.
And why should you go to a different page? That should all be within one experience, right?
Exactly. I 100% agree. Hopefully they'll get that figured out. But just FYI, if you're trying to set these options, you can't do it till after you create the meeting. So just keep that in mind. If you do it through Outlook, you can do it beforehand. So I always do my meetings in Outlook anyway. It's a much better experience.
Cool.
All right. And last but not least, the Teams Nation Community Conference. It's in March 23rd, 2022. It is in European time. It starts at like 1 a.m. US time. So you probably won't catch those. All the stuff's recorded. So if you go to teamsnation.online and sign up, though, we do post those within a week or two of the conference. So you can go back and watch the ones if it's not in your time zone. Obviously, you don't want to stay up that late for that. It runs through about 11 Central Time, so you can get up early and catch a lot of the sessions, and all the Microsoft keynotes are actually at the end around 10 a.m. Central Time too, so you can catch those. We got 13 different tracks from Power Apps to SharePoint to OneDrive to Teams. I mean, it's mostly Teams focused, but we do have some spinoffs of Power Platform and whatnot. 140 sessions, 170 speakers, 100% free. So
what is SOYS? Forgive my ignorance. What is that?
SharePoint, OneDrive, Yammer, Stream, I guess.
Something else. Okay, got it.
Which is going into SharePoint now. So
SharePoint's reduced down to an S. It gets one character now.
Never mind that all that stuff needs SharePoint to actually run.
Yeah, exactly. It's all built off of it, but yeah, the S is the.
Gotta love it.
So, Chris, how much insight do you get into the parody? I love all the changes that are coming in Teams, the time zone, and I use the crud out of the hover card info on users inside of Teams to grab their email addresses, to give people permissions to that. And that little copy email address to clipboard is my best friend in Teams. However, I end up punching the screen when I try to do the hover card in Outlook because that feature is not there. And so I sit, hover, and wave, and okay, did I move it? Do I have focus? Do I unfocused? And oh, shoot, I'm in Outlook. Same hover card, same UI, same look and feel, wrong application, different features. Do you get looped into the parody of the Outlook features whenever they're mimicking that functionality, or should I just stop using Outlook?
I've heard the story of same UI, same thing across the board, and it's I don't think it's ever going to happen. They've been talking about the sharing card, OneDrive and SharePoint and in Office. They almost got that finally down, but for the longest time we heard, wherever you share, it's going to be the same, and that's the closest thing they've done to that. But as far as Outlook parody, I don't know. They're kind of their own. They're two separate teams, 100%. So I mean, your guess is as good as mine.
Cool. Thanks. It was great stuff. I'm looking forward to everything. And all that stuff you showed us was GA?
Or public preview.
But okay.
So they should be in one or the other as of
Cool.
now. But with Teams, they always say something's launched and it takes a month or 2 or 6 before it shows up.
Nothing new there, right?
But that stuff's supposed to be launched. Most of that stuff's live. I mean, some of the meeting stuff, like the NDI stuff, may not be there quite yet, but most of that stuff is live.
Awesome. Really good stuff. Chris, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate all that info. Once again, want to thank our sponsors, Aptigent, the Bifocal podcast. What's up on your next podcast, Jason?
We actually have Kelly Kay coming on, who's the MVP lead for Power BI. She's going to be talking about some cool stuff that's happening in the Power BI community. And while we've been on here, Microsoft just dropped the February Power BI feature summary to the blog. So definitely go check that out. Lots of cool stuff happening in that. Been waiting for that to happen. So very excited to hang up on this call and go get to playing with the new version of Power BI Desktop.
Which we'll get an update on next month, I guess.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to doing that.
Very good. And Paul, upcoming Salesforce developer group, what you got on tap for that?
So I've got one on single sign-on coming up, but I just posted the link. One of the career growth places to get into this kind of exploding is healthcare. So healthcare and financial services, we're seeing a lot of jobs, and there's Salesforce has a health services cloud enabling tool that it's a Salesforce flavor with specific functionality to Health Cloud, and we've got an intro one-on-one on that for anybody. So we're seeing a lot of people coming from healthcare going into tech, and healthcare tech is a great transition place for them. And so we've got a feature on that coming up in March. So I put the registration link for that. It's March 23rd at 6:30 p.m. Central.
Awesome. Same day as the Teams Nation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very good. They can do Salesforce first and then jump over.
I'll just segue right into it. Yeah, we finish about 8 or 9 and 2-hour break and hop on the midnight train to Teams Nation.
Rock and roll. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks again to my fellow co-hosts Paul and Jason, to our guest Chris Webb for joining us, and we will see you all next month on episode 9 of the Community CloudCast.
Thanks a lot.